good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's School Safety Subcabinet meeting. It's a little after 10, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Walter Sallee, and I'm standing in for Dr. Carrie Wright this morning. Can we confirm that we are live streaming?
We are live streaming and recording.
We are. All right, thank you. And Mr. Sherwin, can you please confirm that we have a quorum?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. The last meeting of the subcabinet was in February, and at the February meeting, it was recorded, and that recording is available on the MCSS website. And as such, there are no meeting minutes to approve. Are there any additions to today's agenda? Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay. Second? Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion passes and the agenda for today is approved. Okay, we're going to start right in with our agenda today. The first topic is the Prepare 2024 Summer Conference updates with Kate Bryan and Jessica.
Great, thank you. So we are incredibly excited. As you all know, in July, we'll be hosting our next Summer School Safety Conference, Prepare 2024. So Jessica's going to take a few minutes and go through some of the updates related to this year's conference. We are hoping that all of you will have an opportunity to join us for that conference, so please register, attend. There's some really great individuals, content, and presenters that we'll be having for the summer conference. So we really do hope you'll join us. As you know, over the last 5 years, now almost 6 years, we've been doing our best to broaden the community that we bring in for these conferences, and this year is no exception. So we're really excited to have beyond public schools, also our private school attendees, as well as our non-public special education facilities. So really exciting group of individuals that will be attending this year. So I will turn it over to Jessica. How are you?
Good morning. So, as Kate said, we're very excited about this year's conference. We are going to kick off this year's event with a couple of pre-conference webinars. June the 11th, we'll be doing a pre-conference webinar on sextortion with the FBI. That will be a virtual event and that is open for registration through Zoom. Followed by another virtual event and webinar on July the 11th, which will be Lynn Reimer, who will be talking about new trends in drug use, as well as over-the-counter, which you guys call so-called legal drugs. So we will have a webinar on July 11th as well. Our conference will kick off on July 16th. That evening we'll be doing a behavioral drug assessment workshop and discussion. We did start registration for that last week. Kim and Drew will be kicking that event off for us. So we're very excited to have that pre-conference event the evening prior. And then on the 17th of July, we'll begin our conference. And we're excited to have a lot of, as Kate said, a lot of new topic areas this year. We do have some focus on things such as AI, which is becoming very prevalent in today's world that we'll be talking about, as well as gambling and gaming in schools, which we are starting to see a lot more regular in the schools. And so we're going to have a discussion, an expert that will be talking about gambling and how we talk to our kids on things such as drugs and sex, which we're not really talking about gaming and gambling and the effects that they have. So in addition to that, we're also excited, as usual, we'll have the art showcase, which we launched for the first time last year. We will have it again this year. Our theme is Safe Spaces. And if any of you are interested in not seeing the art last year, we do have a showcase wall in our space that we can walk you through so you can see some of the art that was presented by Maryland students. So it's open to all Maryland students, grades 3 through 12. Private schools, public schools, non-pub, any student in the state of Maryland be encouraged to submit an entry in the showcase. This year, we're also, another effort to involve our students. We reached out to the Peabody Institute, who has a summer program called Tuned In, and we are hoping they will be able to be part of our opening ceremonies and welcome address. They have a summer program with students to teach different musical selections, both vocal and instrumental, throughout the state of Maryland. So students from all across the state that come to their summer program, and there are discussions with them in hopes that they'll be able to be part of our opening address as well. And finally, last but not least, we are always trying to encourage as many people as possible to attend our conference. So we are having some efforts to kind of earn continuing professional development credits while you're learning at our conference. So we are in conversations with, as you'll see, a few institutions to try and have our conference approved for continuing professional development credit. So that includes the MCSS for law enforcement, MSDE for continuing professional development, and National Association of Social Workers, National Association of School Psychologists, and the National Board for Counselors. So we are in those conversations. We hope to have those approved within the next month and be able to announce those out so that while people are not only coming to our conference for learning experience and networking experience, but also be able to earn professional credit for their time as well. Questions?
Thank you both. All right, the next item on the agenda is the 2024 legislative session impact. Dino Pignataro and Kim Buckheit.
Thank you. So yes, legislative session has ended, and there are a number of bills that we were watching, so we're going to review those that actually have passed and look at what particular bill elements, what impact it really has on us at MCSS and the work we do on behalf of school safety. So the first one was House Bill 416, the active shooter safety drill training requirements, pretty hefty, a number of items in there. The first of which, in terms of studying the effectiveness and impact of drills on shooter drills, active shooter drills on students, parents, staff. We have already engaged with the University of Maryland to help conduct that study, to begin to work with them to develop the items, the survey items, and then start to think about how we will distribute that. That data, then, the second item, collected from the locals on that impact, the results of that, and the university will help us to kind of collate that information and provide some analysis, will then inform guidelines. So the intent is that we're sort of data informed in terms of how we're proceeding as a state. So for us to look at best practices, the third item by October 1st of 2024, which is right around the corner. So that was why it was really important that we kind of jumped on this, and we're fortunate to have Sharon Hoover on our advisory board, who was a great contact to help us start to get started. And I'm going to have Dino talk about the model content.
So we're going to be working with Maryland State Police and creating the guideline for gun storage within the home and in general, and getting those distributed to the LEAs for distribution to the students and parents. And then we're going to work on an internal procedure process to collect complaints about any issues that may arise in the LEAs on the drills that are going on, so that we can work with MSDE and create a flow of how we will handle those, including contact and all that.
So you'll see, so on the state agency impact side, you'll see that we really kind of make note of those collaborative efforts. So this one in particular, we will work really closely with Mr. Salih's office related to kind of the regulation what adjustments in the current COMAR need to be made to align to this piece of legislation now, as well as then that last aspect that Dino talked about is really us consulting with MSDE related to that workflow process of any complaints and procedures. Any questions on that one? Actually, before we go on. So House Bill 1386, school employee anti-bias training. It doesn't necessarily, we're not specifically tagged in this one. The work primarily falls to MSDE to develop some guidance, but we have kind of reached out in our monthly conversations to make sure we facilitate the MSDE being able to work with MCAC and some of the hate crime bias information, the data that we actually get to kind of inform that work. Our element would be that second, so when those guidelines, when those activities are developed, that training, to make sure that it aligns within our SRO training academy. So we take what MSD creates to make sure we've got some alignment with what we're providing to our SROs and school safety employees. House Bill 1167, we were fortunate to be able to engage in a lot of dialogue with other state agencies as well as legislators. So this one actually creates a grant program. There are a number of these items that you'll see. So there is a Secure Schools Emergency Response Program, grant program, that is created by House Bill 1167, but there is no funding assigned to that grant program, just for folks to know. So what that bill element, then the first one there, is for us to really kind of gather information from locals related to what they need in the aspect of communication devices. So that scope of communication items, notification systems, for us to really identify what are gaps, what are local needs to be able to help inform that request for funding, for us to look for other funding sources as much as possible. Because we do recognize there's definitely a gap from our locals in some of those areas. Anything else on that?
So I do want to jump in on this one. So this was a really good example throughout the legislative session of multiple agencies working with outside organizations. We worked with MACO, we worked with the Department of Emergency Management, the 911 board. So the original intent of this bill was to require every public school having a panic button system in their school. And the way the bill was written, there was only one vendor that met all of the requirements. So we worked very closely with the legislators, actually even with the vendor, to restructure the language of the bill so that it moved it to a grant program, unfunded, but a grant program, but also that other communication and notification type systems would be eligible under the program, not just panic buttons. So a really great example of everyone working together, trying to get to a bill and a piece of legislation that actually makes sense for our school systems. So,
and I'll even tag with Kate. So this was this was introduced in the previous session in 2023, which kind of prompted MCSS to take the initiative and create a document in collaboration related to what the needs were out there currently in Maryland. But then also, we, over the summer, engaged with our locals related to the 2023 bill to say, does this meet your needs, right? What are your needs? So it really, through that direct interaction with our locals and other agencies, we knew that the panic button wasn't going to necessarily address what their needs were. So again, being able to rewrite that to open the scope of opportunities.
Yeah, and that study that Kim was talking about that we did last summer, we were able to share that with the legislators, with all of the committees when the bills were being heard. It's published on our website. I think when we published it in December, we shared it with all of you, but if there's an interest, it's still available on our website.
So Senate Bill 540, the school mapping data program. This again was a great opportunity for collaboration with IAC as well as MSD and a number of folks as this one was initially introduced. This is another element, so it did pass. It creates this new grant program without money assigned to it. But then the element, though, that's probably most important within this bill is that the IAC is really directed to develop mapping standards. So develop some standardization so that if digital maps are built by local systems, they align. So that emergency responders in each jurisdiction has some understanding of what to expect, right? If they're crossing, right, maybe they're going, crossing the line to assist another jurisdiction, that there's some standardization in those elements. So we're kind of poised to be able to help the IAC, but then to make sure when grants are potentially submitted through the Safe Schools Fund and some others, that we make sure it aligns with those IAC standards, what locals are requesting money to be able to do. And I'll let Dino cover Senate 1077.
This was an alignment of the SRO SSE hiring grant. Previously, the school systems could not hire a school security employee. It was limited to school resource officers. Through the endeavors of the local school systems to work with their legislators and their needs, they were able to get this changed. So now they can also hire a school security employee who works for the school system. Several jurisdictions have with this grant fund now.
Yeah.
We're hoping that the grant will increase down the road. Again, that's going to be the needs base shown that's coming out. It's future first round. And then the increase with us will be, right now we hold 7 SRO, SSE classes throughout the state. Matter of fact, the live portion of the current one just started this morning in Allegheny County. And we're going to have to see the impact of who is hiring extra personnel to see if we need to increase the number of classes we have, the mechanism of delivery.
So questions on any of those so far? House Bill 1390 actually repealed the repeal. Their Gifty will tell you there will remain to be a school safety grant program now. Last year we were told you that went away. This year it's back. House Bill 1219. I'll let kind of this falls right inside of Dino's world. The venue-specific emergency action plans for athletic fields.
If you look out now, it's haphazard who has the actual plans after school activity-wise when it comes to athletics. A lot of the systems do have it in their emergency plans already, but it's going to, this reaches out to even if they lease out their fields for use, those plans are going to have to figure out how this is going to be handled with those persons that are there. So we're working with the local education agency now on different ways that they can handle that and what requirements they may require of leasees of their properties, just so everybody's on the same page when it comes to after action needs after school.
I do want to highlight on that one. So this one includes non-publics. So privates and non-public schools are required to meet this if they receive state funding. So for MSDE who's giving funding or any other agency that gives state funding to private schools or non-public schools, there may be some need for as those grants are, NOFAs are put together, or grants are administered, that there's some way to validate whether or not they're actually meeting the requirements of this statute.
It's a pretty hefty bill when you read it. We've definitely prompted the locals this is one to open and look at, because that it doesn't just say cardiac response plan, it actually defines what that is and many elements that must be included in that plan. So it is very specific in terms of what the intention is for And then the last one, although again, it's not necessarily MCSS specific, but it's one that we definitely see a lot of cross-pollination of the work that we do. So this establishes this new program, the Center for Firearm Violence Prevention and Intervention, which will live inside of the Department of Health. So the Department of Health is tasked with standing up this center and to use a multi-departmental approach to reduce firearm violence. So again, is within the bill language that it should be a really cohesive attempt of state agencies working together for this. So we really want to monitor. We've engaged with our actual Department of Health member of the subcabinet already in conversations and saying we're here and want to help support them. So on or before May 1st of 2025, they have to develop a state plan of this public health approach to guide the work. And then there are specific things, so I've bulleted here within the center, offering trainings, NTA, issuing guidance, model processes, conducting public service announcement campaigns, and sharing data, collaborating with higher ed and research institutions related to firearm violence. So we are just waiting to help in any way that we can. So questions on any of those bills? It was a good session. It was busy. There was a lot of stuff that touched us. There was a lot of opportunities for collaboration. And I think overall we're pretty happy with the outcome.
I was going to just say that at MSDE we're doing kind of a parallel process where we are taking the bills and we're assembling small groups to kind of analyze them and see what the impacts are, not only for us, but how we can reach across agencies to collaborate. So I heard a lot here that we've been talking about the same one, so we'll be reaching out and I look forward to our collaboration. Any other questions on that? Bills? Okay, then with that, then we'll turn to the budget for the fiscal year 2025 budget. DP Quarshie.
Good morning, everyone. So just very briefly, I wanted to provide a quick update about our fiscal year 25 budget outlook. For our operating budget, MCSS has been appropriated about $3.4 million. As you can see, a majority of that is in our salaries. We also have a couple of contractual service agreements with Maryland Department of Emergency Management and, of course, the MCAC. We do have IT services and rents that are part of our shared costs. So that is a big chunk of what you see under contractual services. MCSS will now have 16 full-time pins for our fiscal year 25 budget. So like we always say, it's a small team doing mighty work. So there's not really much change in our operating budget. As far as our grants program for fiscal year 25, so it's still the three primary grants that we've administered over the last few years. The School Resource Officer Grant, you do see $17 million appropriated, but the SR grant is only $10 million because there are two sources of funding that essentially funds that grant program. So the overall or the total appropriation for the SR grant is only $10 million on the special fund side. We also have the hate crimes grant, $3 million, just like we did last fiscal year. And of course, it's one of those grants that we always receive more applications for than we have funding for, so we don't anticipate anything differently for fiscal year 25. And the last grant that MCSS administers, of course, is the Safe Schools Fund grant. We expect that when we have the next subcabinet meeting in August, that we will have some new grant applications for you at that point. And in addition to the MCSS grants, as you heard about the one of the bills that was passed where it repealed the repeal of the School Safety Grant Program, which is a grant MCSS administers in collaboration with the IAC. Initially, it was set to sunset in fiscal year 26, but that has been repealed. So as far as we know, That is a grant that will continue, and MCSS in collaboration with the IAC will continue to administer that grant in fiscal year 25. The appropriation for that is $10 million. It is only for the local education agencies to apply for. And over the last 2 years, I believe that we've started, administering this grant. We have always received applications that fully utilizes the entire $10 million. So that has been a very useful grant for the school systems. I did want to highlight the Senate Bill 1077 that was mentioned by Kim and Dino. So what that does is that for the fiscal year 25 SRO grant, in addition to using the SRO funds for overtime wages or SRO salaries, we would now allow, as part of the eligibility, funding for the SSC salaries. And so now we would essentially have 3 categories that are funded with the SRO grant, which is the SRO salaries, overtime wages for adequate coverage, and the SSC salaries as well. So that pretty much covers all of our budget outlook for 25.
I do also want to highlight that the inclusion of school security employees, those are individuals that are also required to go through our school resource officer training academy. So, it begins to be a nice sort of linkage to the funding and the resources to allow the locals to determine what their needs are, but ensuring that whether they go the law enforcement route or school security route, that those individuals are trained in the same manner. Apologies to this. It's never, it's always a fun moment. I did, I got excited. There's more money, there's more ways to use the funds. There we go. All right.
Any questions on the budget? All right, we'll move forward with our next item, which is request to publish. This is COMAR 14.40.06, data collection and reporting. And I believe you have a copy of that, and I would ask that Ms. Bryan and Mr. Pierce please walk us through the proposed regulation.
Sure, we appreciate it. I'm going to pass it over to Ron on the details. So just to make it clear, this is a new regulation that we're asking to publish to the register, and it ties to data collection and reporting requirements that the LEAs are already required to do. We feel it will assist us in those data collection and reporting efforts. So Ron, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kate. Good morning, everybody. So not as exciting as money, right? But it's still still important. So this is a one-pager, so it's short. So hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at it. As Kate said, it's kind of the bottom line up front is it's just setting into regulation the dates when certain reports are due and the timing on how often they're done. So there's 5 altogether. The emergency summary report is due by August 1st, or will be due by August 1st of each year. And these dates, a lot of these were set because over time, and there's been about 5 years, I guess, since we started with this, we found, and we asked the LEAs, we said, hey, what the timing on these, what should they be to coincide with how you collect them? So the first report, the emergency summary report, is done on incidents that involve their schools in using their emergency plans during the previous school year. So August 1st was a reasonable time frame to set for them to assemble this report. It's just a summary on, basically it's a number of threats, the number of emergencies, number of lockdowns, evacuations, the number of hours that they spend in drills and exercises, and also in emergencies. So it's a kind of collection of stats. They pull those together at the end of the school year, and by August 1st they have to give it to us. And that's done every year. Next up, incidents of force reports. So that's a use of force by a school security employee, or SRO. And they turn those in also every year. They are also going to be due on August 1st of each year. That's been in place now for a few years, so they're familiar with that date. school emergency plans. They're required now every 2 years to turn in a emergency plan for every school for us to review, and then we will in turn give them feedback and comments back on each of those. That's to be done by September 30th every 2 years. We've kind of settled on that figure because annually, in some cases, we do get them annually, along with the letters to the superintendent, right, that you gave them. So we worked the timing out on that so that it's about the same time. So about the same time you get the letters, we should be getting plans. That, because of some of the confusion in the first couple of years, we found that keeping the dates similar to what other mandated reports are required, they have forms and reports and such, we can reduce some of that confusion on their part. Because emergency plans and emergency certifications kind of simple, right? And then we have school safety evaluations, one that's near and dear to me. These were all required by the Safe to Learn Act, and they set a date in place initially, and then it said regularly thereafter. Well, regularly really means regulation. So to keep, they've all asked us for, give us a time frame. How often do you want these? Some want it longer, some do them every year. The title, the subsection of this is titled Annual Safety Evaluations. 1510 is titled that, but annually is a big lift for school systems over 200, especially for those folks. So every 2 years regionally. So every 2 years they're going to need to do safety evaluations to every school and submit to us a summary. There's web forms available on their portal. Their emergency, I guess it's MCSS's school safety portal. There's one for each county in Baltimore State. There's a form right there, they can submit it. And basically, it's a summary of the trends they see. Either physical security, things they found when they were going through all the schools, or other safety concerns like emergency planning. Did they find a gap somewhere that they're going to address? And then last but not least, school resource officer and adequate coverage report is something required by Safe to Learn Act that they turn in every school. And we get them really by the first, really when the school year starts. Because it's a plan on how they're going to cover all the schools, either with an assigned officer or through adequate coverage, which is, how they, through a beat system, how they supply an officer if there's a call for services, something they're required to do. That's basically it.
Now, with regard to the certifications that we get every year on September 30th,
Yeah.
if there's a new plan, or if there's been any changes to their plan, then they also submit to us a new, whatever they updated in a new plan on that date as well, along with the certification.
Right. And we've got, so last year, because we started also asking for that, they were submitting the certification letters also to us.
Right.
In addition to you, so we hope to maybe synergize those in the future.
Yeah.
We also give Don access, MSD has access to that dashboard now, so this way it's a one collection point, and everybody involved in the back end has that access to it, so
Yeah.
any plans he wants to also look at, the certification letters, they go right in.
Any questions about that? And with regard to COMAR 14.40.06, data collection and reporting, is there a motion to publish? Second. Any discussion?
I'll make a motion.
Any discussion? Any additional discussion? All in favor? Any opposed?
Aye.
And any abstentions? The motion passes, and thank you guys very much. All right, moving on with the next agenda item. And this is the hate crimes grant. This is a data perspective presented by
Good morning, everyone, and my name is Jane Jebraj. I'm the Business Solutions and Data Manager at Maryland Center for School Safety. And I just want to go back a few slides where you showed the grant appropriations, and you could see the hate crimes grant on the bubble right there, 14.6%, $3 million. That is a grant that we've administered for the past 6 years. 6 years, right? Yeah, 6 years, and it is a really interesting grant. You made a really good point there, stating the most number of applicants we get is in that particular grant. And it is also a competitive state-funded reimbursement grant, which is awarded to both public and private schools, non-public child care centers. And so the recipient types does cover a wide variety and wide range. So we get a lot of applicants. Because it's competitive, we do have a responsibility to make sure that the funds are properly distributed based on the particular need. In this case, the institutions that determine to be risk of hate crime incidents. And that is what I'm kind of going to go in here and show what methodology can be used in terms of using the existing data that we have from 5 years of issuing this grant. And every year we revise the NOFA, and UP does a great job in from lessons learned from the previous year. We revise the NOFA to get closer and closer to real world impacts of how can we address that directly. We jump here. All right, so what you see here is the actual incidents, hate crime incidents that are captured by MCAG through state police's reporting. And it is publicly available data. Every year MCAG produces a wonderful report on aggregated numbers with the hate crimes and the hate incidents in each jurisdiction within Maryland. So we basically use that as our validation factor in order to see how well it works out. So as you can see, I have year after year of data here. As I go every year, you can see the intensity of that increases. And finally, we aggregated all those data together and created a cumulative average that kind of shows the hotspots for each zip code within Maryland, that shows where the density of hate incidents are the highest. As you can see, it's pretty self-explanatory. Where the darker the color, the higher the intensity in those particular zip codes. And just looking at this, you can also see the trend that the most populated areas do get more reporting, and that's pretty natural in terms of data. But also, we do see some hotspots where they're outside the high density populated areas, which is worth noting as well. So we have then what we did basically here is we applied, one second, it's a little bit slow. All right, we overlaid all the grant applicants' location on top of the known existing hotspots and the rest of the zip code hate crimes data. And you can kind of visually, on first glance, you can see that it pretty much matches. Where there is a general trend of hate crime reporting, we've addressed those hotspots pretty effectively. And this is a accumulation of all 6 years of data, for all the way from 2019 to 2024. And you can kind of see the distribution is pretty much matching, which is what we would like to see, because where there is need is where we have to address the need as well. And there's three things I basically want to point out, the observations within this. What we determine from this is that there are areas where there are higher density of hate crime reporting where we don't have any applicants. So that it's only possible to identify those spatially. You can look at an Excel table and see how the distribution of our grants. We could do by county, say, okay, this many applicants within a county, but this gives a much better, clear view of how the distribution happens and when the need happens. So I'm going to click one of those zip codes where you can see on the top, which is a hotspot, and it's taking a little bit of time. Slow instrument. I believe that's Edgewood, and as you can see, it is a hotspot, and we haven't addressed that area yet. But this analysis gives us the ability to identify those areas where we haven't properly given out specific grants, or we haven't seen applicants from there. So in this case, it's obvious that we have 0 grants in that Edgewood community, but we do have over 6 incidents in the past 5 years of that particular. There's a chart that's supposed to be loading there. So year by year, you can see the incidents that are happening there, but we don't have any applications from there. So what do we do next? I could, in theory, get to that area and look up the schools that are in that particular area to identify what type of schools there are. So in here, I can clearly see that there are 4 schools in that particular zip code who potentially could apply. And there are no private schools in there. I checked with the data, and there are 4 public schools in there, which means Harford County could potentially use that to leverage that particular grant funding. And having said that, there is another scenario where these things are useful, which is doing the opposite. Now, we do see some areas, like down here in Talbot County, we do have applicants, but there is no reported hate crimes in that particular community. And I checked back for the past 20 years from MCAC's data, all the reports, Talbot County has never reported. So that brings up a couple of issues. One, it points out the reporting mechanism, and we could work with law enforcement to see why that's happening. Also, how did this come into play? We have to go back to the application to see what did they justify in order to do that. And that boils down to the NOFA. And we could see that a communal threat is also a threat if the particular institution is majority of one of those hate crime, hate-biased, vulnerable population, then the grants are issued based on that criteria. However, the grants are structured in a way that the points a direct threat gets is much more compared to the points that the indirect threats and the point the communal threats are. So it is a good way to tell where our distribution is, and also where we have potential expansion in outreach, or for them to be exposed to these particular funding. The third thing I want to show here is the process itself. How can this particular app enhance our approval process, right? So if I'm searching for a particular school, the internet is a little faster, but anyway, as I start typing, I can actually see the past applicants in here. And I just type AAL, and you can see 2 different institutions come up, Al-Huda School and Montessori School. And you could see Montessori School have applied in 2022, 2023, and all going back to 2020, and the other one starts at 2022. So this gives us an opportunity for grant application comes in. I can just quickly look up and say, hey, they're past applicants, and there's a specific criteria and allocation points for that. They're past applicants versus new applicants. And it's a quick verification process that we could utilize to see how they're doing. In this case, if I'm selecting one of those, the map automatically moves there, and also it gives specifics on how much was approved, what year, and we could keep going back and forth on every year and quickly see how much we approved last year, for what cost, and all that, and pulling the applications. So multi-use application for us to understand what's going on in the community, and are we distributing our dollars properly where the need is, and also making the process more efficient in terms of how we process hate crimes grants applications. So that's pretty much what I have. Any questions?
I do have a question. I'm assuming that we can target dollars for those areas that are underrepresented. I mean, you mentioned an area in Hartford County.
Mm-hmm.
So the protocol around the grant application allow us to do some more intensive outreach?
So, yes, but only to some extent, right? So this is a competitive grant. And in addition to what MCSS offers, VOCAP also has a, hate crimes grant that the state, that's funded with state funds. And so as far as targeting, yes, we reach out to, for the most part, prior year grant applicants, because when you have their information, you can reach out to them directly. But we also have all of our, channels of communication, adult delivery emails, where we're able to announce the grant. Jan mentioned the area where, I think Talbot County,
Yes.
where we have an application or a grant applicant where there's no reported incident. And so as far as the hate crimes grant is concerned, you have to be at risk of hate crime incidents. So you may not have necessarily have, hate crime incident happen at your school, but maybe you are in that protected class, right? And you are trying to, harden your school or come up with, security things that you can do to improve safety and protect you against hate crime incidents. So as far as outreach, we do our best. I like to say there's always room for improvement, obviously. So I have reached out this year, as a matter of fact, in anticipation of the fiscal year 25 NOFA, to work more directly with VOCAP, because in addition to all of the same applicants that we have, their grants have religious institutions can apply. They cannot apply with our grants, but the eligibility requirements in terms of the project are very similar. And because these are state dollars, we want to avoid duplicity or double dipping, for lack of a better term. And so yes, we are reaching out, working with our intra-state agency, but also reaching out to our external partners as much as we can. But it's a competitive grant. They're limited funding, so the more applicants, the lesser the pie for most of them. But we do have a maximum amount that a school can apply for. So even if we get a lot of applications, yes, not all of them make it, but there's only so much that they can get overall. So yes, but yes.
Regarding that question, one quick thing I want to point out, yes, we did work with VOCAP, they're wonderful partners, and they shared their data with us. So I can quickly plot that on top. All the red ones you see are VOCAP data. We could see them covering way more than we did. So it is more of a statewide perspective. Their prevention against hate crimes grants applicants are the ones that pops up in red. And still some areas, hotspots are not addressed, and it's clear when you combine those data to get a better perspective across the state of how grants are working.
And it is nice visually, as Jan mentioned, it's a lot easier to sort of see, are we on the right track, right? Because this was done this year, so this was done after all the reports were made, and clearly Gifty and the team that has been working with Gifty in the approval of the hate crimes applicants or applications, they're doing the right things, right? The money is going to the individuals who are identified. So it's really nice to be able to overlay that and visually be able to see. So really good work by JM and the team.
Yeah, also I have to give full credit to the MDM team that works with me to put together all the GIS needs that MCSS.
I was just going to say this is very powerful data, and I imagine that, as Ms. Buckheit said earlier, that when we get into discussion about the anti-bias bill, that this would probably drive some of that discussion. So this is very, very powerful.
And that is kind of the idea, not to limit it to MCSS, but to keep it as a topic, so we can incorporate other state efforts into it to get the situational awareness of what's going on with the crime statistics and what's going on with our distribution of grants as well.
Any other questions about the data? The grant?
Thank you, Jimmy.
Okay. All right, our next agenda item is the statewide school-based incident tabletop, which took place on Friday, exercise takeaways. And this is Dino Pignataro and Ms. Buckeye.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, good.
Background on this is, like 2 years ago, there was an incident at a local education agency, and after that incident and all the communications that we provided to from different partners, we sat down and looked at how both we can do better and how we can streamline the flow of things statewide with different partners in the state. We also looked at what Great Mills happened way back in 2018, and the role the center had, and the partners we brought in for that too. And we realized we could do better, we could make it a faster workflow with everybody. So we developed a contract with a group to come in and help us write a state emergency plan from our perspective. And this is where I'll give kudos to Kim. Kim was basically the bus driver to keep me in line on this. And she made sure we kept on track with everything, because I have a tendency to go with the flow of different things. So, based on that plan, we needed to exercise that plan like we do with any plan. And this incident exercise came about, and I'll let you move it.
Yep, thank you, Dino. Yes, I feel like I do drive the bus. And there are unruly people behind me who are either not getting on the bus or right. No, but so this has been a collaborative partnership. So I think really when we were 2 years ago, MSD, again, Walt's team, and MDEM, so the Department of Emergency Management, we met monthly and we're really talking through all of that. And it was actually a small exercise that we conducted with a variety of all of the different state agencies in Frederick. Frederick County was willing to host us, and we had the school safety coordinator and their director of student service join that from Frederick County to give us feedback, like, what would you need, right? And as we go through this as a state, we're assuming certain things. And it's great to have locals say, no, you're wrong, right? Or you missed this. And it was at the end of that that they indicated that it was a valuable experience for them to understand what the state has to offer in terms of resources for during an emergency and after in recovery, but that there would be value in all of the systems having that opportunity to engage in that same kind of exercise, which then led us to this event. So yes, on Friday morning, the way that we operated the event, and this was, Kate planted this seed, honestly, probably one day when we were walking down the hallway, was to, so we had actually done this similar with a behavior threat assessment and special education IEP needs, where we operated from here, this central location, and projected out to the 24 LEAs and asked them to create a coordinated team on their side of their locals. So we kind of duplicated that effort. Sent a lot of information about 3 months in advance to help them invite their local emergency managers to the event. So we literally sent them customized invites. All they had to do was insert the location, time, and we were really excited. I think all of us were very pleasantly surprised somewhat at the outcome of Friday's event. So we had 22 of the 24 jurisdictions actually engaged with a local coordinated response team. So you can't really see on the screen here a little bit, but the picture that Kate's in, you can see all the tiles, right? Each one of those tiles kind of represents a system. And as you look in, you can see some systems had, 20 some people in the room, some had 10, right, or maybe 5. And we, for this particular exercise, the first pass, we wanted to leave that autonomy on their side. We really just wanted them to participate, engage, get the experience. So one of the systems, so the 2 that didn't participate, one of those, the school safety coordinator joined. He was struggling to get an internal team, local team, so he joined another system. So he actually went to a neighboring county and participated in the exercise with them. And then we did have one system that was absent, that did not participate, didn't show up and didn't have a team. So I think the sort of takeaway for that, for us at MCSS MSDE is, I think we feel a little more confident within those 22 systems that if an event were to happen, that there would be a coordinated response effort, right? Those people are talking to each other and they're planning together on what to do if something happens, which is somewhat reassuring to me anyway, and I think to all of us. So some other takeaways. Oh, Jan, I'm not moving.
It's flipping here.
Oh, I just
It's on the delay.
Okay, there we go. So some of the, so we, the opportunity was presented, so basically it went from 9 to 12. We conducted the exercise here, so actually our partners that we've kind of contracted with gave a scenario. So we gave an initial scenario. We logged out sort of, right, we were quiet here, and the local team talked about the scenario we presented to them, right, each local team. And then we brought them back after roughly 15 minutes of discussion, and we presented more information. So we did what's called an inject, right? So here's what's happened next. 3 minutes later, this is now what occurs. And then we again go silent on our side, and on their side, the local team talks about that new piece of information and what they would do. And then following that first inject, we actually had them report out. So they then came back, and we actually called on systems to share what their team had talked about. And it was that part that I think became really pleasantly surprising, because we did not know what to anticipate. Like, would they just come and, you know, say a couple things and log back off? But they had really great discussion, and they shared in detail what they would do. And then what we found others doing was, there was one particular moment that was I thought a little awkward, but one system said they would do one thing, and actually some other systems said no. Like, we would never do that, and this is why. So it ended up creating some great dialogue across systems in terms of getting them to think of new ideas. Like, we hadn't thought of that, that's cool. As well as, this is why we wouldn't have done that, right? And allowing them to really sort of learn from each other. And that was something that so then from 1 to 2, we did a hot wash. So with the leads, so the LEA leads, so like one individual was sort of designated to lead this effort. They joined us from 1 to 2 to just talk about the experience. And that was something they actually said, that they really enjoyed the opportunity to hear what others were doing and to learn from other systems. They indicated that it was relatively easy for them to engage their local emergency responders. That literally by just inviting them to come on this day at this time, the emergency response personnel were very, very willing to join in the conversation. And then the other thing that just sort of emerged, so as they were reporting out, each system was actually using different terms. So the scenario was initially that there's a social media report that somebody's going to kind of shoot up a school. What do you do, right? You know, a lot of information. And then the first inject is like 3 minutes later, there's actually a shooting, a teacher and a student are shot on a playground. So it's an outside perpetrator, right? Not an internal threat, but an external threat who has shot, injured individuals and then flees in a vehicle. So the perpetrator's at large. So what it should have prompted was the use of secure the perimeter, right? Make sure all of your exterior doors are locked, bring everybody inside. Folks were using lock out, lock down, level 1. There was like every system had a different term for what they were doing, which then like on our side, we were like, what would that mean? Like somebody used the word like their entire system in lockdown, and we were like, I don't know if that's what she meant, like lockdown, like kids were in the corner, right, locks, lights out of sight. So they acknowledge the confusion that creates when they're using different words to mean potentially the same thing, right? Which I'll let kind of Dino maybe take it from that point.
Yeah, we've also taken past historical look at things too. 911 centers, when the local law enforcement is dealing with something outside the school, they'll call to tell the school system they should be saying it's like secure your school. A lot of them default to the word lock down, lock out when they're calling the school system. So the school systems are making the assumption, rightfully so, we need to go to lockdown because law enforcement told us to. Whereas if they go into a secure, and the education keeps on continuing inside, because nobody can get in. So this has brought up some internal points where we're going to start working on training also with, once we get them into a what I call a groove of using the same terminology, we will then go outside the local education agencies and work with creating a training program for them to use with their PSAPs and public safety answering points and their local law enforcement. So everybody's on the same page then when they're talking about things.
But there's no requirement for them to do so,
Yeah.
to be totally honest, right? Every system, if they want to use tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and teach that within their system, they can. If they want to use terms lock out, lock down, you know, and define it locally, they can.
I will say, our neighbor to the northeast of West Delaware has, they've regulated one standard type of protocol. It's actually the SRP protocol. I love you guys. In every school, 3 counties, I don't know how many school districts, because they're independent school districts in Delaware, but everybody's using the same, and they've also working with their law enforcement, training them in that protocol also.
And it was, you know, it was interesting because the way this scenario played out, it could have been 2 separate school systems, right? Dealing with the same incident. So imagine if the original school that was targeted versus the one in the second part of the scenario were in different jurisdictions, right? The individual cross jurisdictions. So now you've got potentially 2 jurisdictions, one calling secure, the other calling lockdown. The parents completely confused, the media has no idea, it's just using whatever words they hear. There was even conversations within one jurisdiction that law enforcement and the school system were using different terms. And then the media was using another term. So imagine like this sort of run of confusions, because we all know the words matter, right? And in our world, lockdown means something very specific. Where if you use lockdown, or even take the actions to do a lockdown, right? You want to make sure that you're doing that in response to what you should be doing a lockdown, right? So the threats on the outside of the building, you want to keep everybody in, keep them safe, and don't let them outside the building. But it doesn't mean you can't continue activities on the inside of the building, right? Versus a lockdown, the threat is physically inside the building. And so you want students to take a different action. So just keep that in mind as we talk about these exercises going forward and trying to find ways, whether it's through training, more communication, more exercises, potentially regulation on the MSDE side, I don't know, but some way for us to align all of the school systems, at least in terminology. I know when I was with the Department of Emergency Management, we had a similar problem with POCs. So the Emergency Operations Centers all had different levels. So the state would be at a level 1, level 2, level 3, right, using numbers, but then locals might be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right, from low to high, to where the state had to go out and basically say, we're all gonna get in a room, and we're all gonna agree, and we're gonna use things like partial, full, and we did that, but it took some effort. It took about 2 years to get us to that. So, and this I can see is a similar challenge.
Yeah. So it was a good, I mean, it emerged, so here in the room, in that first report out, we were sort of passing notes and we're like recognizing that it was happening. But it was great in the hot wash that the local systems also recognized that it was happening and some concerns. We did some polls. They identified the month of October, February, and March as ideal, and the Wednesday is the best day of the week. So our intention going forward to meet their needs is we really want to host 2 events, really in the same fashion that seem to operate and work well. A fall event in October. The idea is even to define like the second Wednesday in October, and going forward into perpetuity, right? The second Wednesday in October in Maryland, there is a statewide school-based exercise. People can put it on their calendars and prepare. And then to the same fashion, right, in February or March, to select one of those 2 dates. They also were given the opportunity to give feedback. They indicated that they would like to test reunification process and special events that have public presence. So whether it's a football game on a Friday night, a graduation, a drama production, that those are 2 different areas that they feel they need to spend more time planning for and testing and engaging in some work. And then kind of the last thing is that our advisory board, actually, when we originally were talking about this, had asked for us to host a non-public event. So to do a very similar event for our non-public schools. So the way we're going to really operate is actually June 4th. I have a number of folks coming together to just start that planning. So a couple of our non-public representatives, Maryland School for the Deaf, Maryland School for the Blind, to just meet initially and plan. Like, what would that look like for them to really make it advantageous, and for us to, as a target, to have like an August date for us to conduct that exercise with them. So other thoughts from the group, a number of folks were helping.
I would say, having been part of this, it was just an incredible experience. I think one of the most powerful things to me was the diversity of the teams. So you had law enforcement, you had school-based personnel, you had student services, you had all of these groups of folks that have different functions, but when there's an incident or something, they have to come together to, for a common cause. And I think that having that diversity in each of those rooms is just incredible to see. And then it kind of manifested itself when teams were reporting out, and they talked about, student services would do this, or law enforcement would do this, the first responders would do this. And it was just good to get folks thinking about that, which was our intention going in to this, and it kind of really reflected itself in some of the discussions that I heard on that. So I think that was just extremely powerful. Then the second thing that I thought was also powerful was the learning piece that you mentioned, Ms. Buckeye, and that is, one LEA would handle the exact same situation a different way, which is fine, but what it gave folks a chance to do was reflect on that and determine, does this really make sense? If I'm in this situation, do I still want to do it this way? And the fact that folks were open to thinking differently about how they would operate under those circumstances was a very powerful piece to me.
On the local end, I've got to give kudos to the SSCs, that they were really the leads in their jurisdictions. And not only do they have we've got to ask, who should I have? I said, we've told them, who's going to be there the day you have an incident, help them work. So they went then back and looked at their plans, who they'd be working with, internally and externally. And some of them even went so far as to invite to observe in their jurisdiction school board members, the local state attorney, and everybody else. So it's nice to see that they're opening up and letting people see that could potentially be involved.
Any other thoughts, discussion? Just
I just want to say that that last statement, I'm very appreciative that you're also working.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the meeting on the 4th. We anticipate that for this one, we literally put the exercise scenario and we stepped back. And then when they came back, we really let them sort of, this is what we would do, right? And our LEAs, for the most part, there's a degree of expertise, right? They have more extensive teams. We know our non-publics don't have that luxury, right? So we anticipate that it may look a little more like, here's the scenario, come report back, and then maybe we do a little more instructional element, right? So we have a window after that where we say, here are some things you should have considered, right? Do you have these written into your plan? Here are a couple options where we sort of incorporate the two. May be more appropriate for them, but we'll see what they say.
Any other comments? Okay, Johnson. Very well. All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda items. Unless there are additional comments?
Just the dates.
And then the dates, yep. So getting to the dates, our upcoming dates are on the slides in front of you. Two of our regularly scheduled meetings are on holidays this year. So MCSS is recommending that these date changes to the schedule, so.
Sure, I can do it. So the Tuesday, October 15th, that's the virtual as needed meeting if you all need to approve grant applications. The Monday, which would be the 14th, is a holiday. So we're recommending moving that virtual meeting to the 15th, if you all agree. And then Monday, is it Tuesday, November 18th? So whatever the Monday is, which I think is the 17th, it becomes the following Monday, the 18th. So it would normally be the 11th. Do I have the numbers right? Yes.
No, November 18th is a Monday.
So it would normally be the 11th, and we're recommending moving it to the 3rd week, which is still a week before Thanksgiving, because Thanksgiving's later.
So these are the dates, right?
Those are the correct dates.
Okay, okay.
The Tuesday threw me off.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the proposed dates for October and November? Second? All right. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. And that brings us to the end of our meeting. So is there a motion to adjourn? Second? Oh, second, all right. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. We are adjourned, folks. Thank you. Thank you for a great meeting.